All right. So it's actually up. Oh, I forgot my prop. Did I? Yes, I forgot my prop. Hang on. We'll get my prop. It's actually opportune that that's the picture that they've got up there. Sorry for the blank stage there. That's from a trip that we took in 2023 with Patrick and Stephen. I found out that you could see Pompeii in Egypt in the same trip, and I said, I'm going on that trip. So we did. We went for my 60th birthday, and we had a grand old time, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But our theme today is Breathe. That's the title of the talk that came from home office. As normal for me, I looked at the notes and went, huh? and made up my own stuff here today. But Breathe is our theme, and I'm considering this a PSA. And I don't know about you, but when I was young, a PSA meant a public service announcement. You know, you'd get those every once in a while on TV and stuff. This is not a public service announcement. This is practical spiritual awareness. This is your PSA for today. It's practical spiritual awareness, something that hopefully you can take home today and incorporate into your life that'll make a very positive change. That's the goal. That's absolutely the goal. Last week, I watched Rev Dee's talk. It was awesome, wasn't it? And I love that she talked about because versus because. That was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. We can look at what's going on in life and use it as an excuse. I don't have X, Y, Z because, and we can look to our circumstances and use them all day long and say, well, there's this going on, the economy, there's my figure, there's my whatever. And we can use it as an excuse for why things aren't happening. Or we can use our power, we can claim our power and use it and be the cause of change, not only in our own life, but in the world. Because versus because. Brilliant. And I want to kind of speak to that and how you can become aware of when things are going on in your life that may not be so great. And our breath is actually one of the ways that we can be aware of this. One of my favorite Mary Morrissey quotes is, "Fear is excitement without the breath." Fear is excitement without the breath. Now think about that. When we're in fear, you hold your breath. I mean, just look at the body language and everything. Just, everything closes in. Stop breathing. Oh, geez, you know. Whereas excitement, wow, look at the body language. Look at the internal language. Your breath is an indicator of what's going on the inside. So if we can become conscious of where our breath is, we can start to hone in on what our feelings are. And why are our feelings important? Our feelings are very, very, very important because of what happens when ice cubes melt. And you're going, what? Which is fine. Which is fine. Do you know what makes ice cubes melt?
Heat.
Heat. What is heat? Heat is energy. Heat is energy. So when heat is added to ice cubes, solid particles gain energy, and I love this, this is so beautiful, and break free from their fixed positions. Isn't that an awesome turn of phrase? And it's science. I got this on a science website. When heat is added, and we can use the word energy, when energy is added, solid particles gain that energy and break free from their fixed positions. Guess what? The same is true of you. The same is true of your life. When energy is added to a situation, whether it's positive energy or negative energy, things move. If they're not moving in the direction that you want, pay attention to your energy. Where is your energy? Where is your attention at? Because whatever we focus on grows. Whatever we focus on grows. So if we're focusing on what we don't have, guess what we get more of? Not having. This is what cause and effect means. This is actually what karma. This is what karma means. Cause and effect, karma, all one and the same. And it feels like punishment, but it's not. It's the world reflecting back to you what your predominant thoughts are so you can change them. So you can change them. If you like what's going on in your life, have more of those thoughts. If you don't like what's going on in your life, change your mind. We say in here, change your thinking, change your life, and it's true. And it's very, very, very true. So then the task becomes, there's one more thing with the ice cube before I leave the ice cube. There's a critical state. There is a critical state. It's called this in science. And this is the most interesting part to me. The critical state is right before the ice goes to liquid or the liquid goes to ice. And on the surface, it looks like nothing is happening. It absolutely looks like nothing is happening. But at this critical state, if something is going from liquid to ice, all these little crystals are forming, and they're all starting to gather together, and you can't see it on the surface, but that ice cube's about to happen. And then the ice cube seems to happen instantaneously, but actually it's building for quite a while. Does this make sense to you? So it goes with us. Our world is a mirror for how everything works. Everything works in the same way. You can look at a tree. You know, we use that analogy all the time. Acorn, seed, plant, or soil, seed, plant. Let me get it right. Soil, seed, plant. Whatever we plant into the fertile soil of mind, of earth, we plant a seed of an idea in there. We fertilize it, we watch it, and there's all kinds of stuff going there, but we can't necessarily see it. So it is with our life. We get distracted, or not distracted. We get, pardon me? I'm looking for the word. If you guys can help me with the word. If you're waiting for something. Anticipation? We have anticipation, but we get, if we're anticipating it and it's not here yet. Anxious. Discouraged is the exact word I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you. Discouraged. We get discouraged when we look at our life and we're not seeing the changes that we want there. So then we go into discouragement, and what do we get more of? Things to be discouraged. Now, it's not that anything out here has changed, but what's changed is our lens. As soon as we're in discouragement, it's like putting on this pair of, discouragement glasses, and we see the world through the discouragement glasses, and we find more things to be discouraged about. It's not that anything shifted, but our lens has, and we find all this stuff that makes it worse and worse and worse, and then we have a little big pity party for ourselves and don't go anywhere. Yes? The critical state is happening right where you are all the time with everything in our life. It's just, is it going to be the ice cube or is it going to be the liquid? Choice is ours. Choice is ours. So, you will hear me say this often, and I know you guys have heard this before, but I'm here to remind you, we don't get what we want, we get what we are. Where are your repetitive thoughts? Where are your repetitive thoughts? That's what you're going to experience as your life. We don't get what we want. If we're wanting, we get more to want. We get what we are. If we're happy, we get more to be happy about. And we have control over this. We have 100%, and everybody will go, but. We control our thoughts. We control our thoughts. So part of that, a big part of that, is awareness of what our thoughts are. And I return to the idea of breathe and breath and being aware. Are we holding things in? Are we tight? Are we constricted? Are we open? And there are some things to be fearful of. Anybody know what this is? It's a passport, yes.
What color is that passport?
That passport is purple. This is an American passport, but it says on the top of it, if you can't read it, emergency passport. Emergency passport. So that picture that we started with, that was at the Amalfi Coast when we were on this cruise with the boys. It was beautiful there. And we went from there to Greece, from there to Egypt. Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Egypt since I was like 5 years old. We had a wonderful time in Egypt. We had this guide named Omar for 2 days. We got to know Omar really well. It was just a magical, magical trip. And then we get back on the boat. The timing of this is kind of critical. We get back from Egypt, and they rushed us onto the boat. And we didn't at the time really understand why they were rushing us on the boat. And the next day, we were to be in Bethlehem. That's where our excursion the next day was. Well, that day when we were in Egypt, and they rushed us back onto the boat, is the day that everything started in the Gaza Strip. We were 20 miles away. We were 20 miles away from that. And thankfully, didn't have an impact outside of they canceled our excursion. They told us to go out in the Mediterranean for a while, so they brought the boat out to the Mediterranean, and we just rested from all of our journeys, didn't think anything of it. And then the next day, we were to be somewhere else, I think in Turkey again, or in Turkey the next day. Cyprus? Oh, Cyprus we didn't need our passports for, so we were in Cyprus, and that went fine. And then the next day, we were going to get off at our first stop in Turkey, and we needed to have a visa and our passports. And so I looked for my passport, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it anywhere. To make a really, and it's still going to be a long story, you know how I am. To make a really long story short, when I was in the van with the tour guide and stuff, the tour guide said, why don't you sit in the front so that you can take pictures? He noticed the first day that I was taking pictures chronically. So he was saying something, and my fanny pack was open on my lap. And I turned around to hear him, and my fanny pack went bloop. And everything fell right in between the seat and the console, including apparently my passport. And I picked everything up, and I had my boat card, and I had my wallet, and I had my camera, and I had this and that. And it felt like something was missing, but I couldn't figure out what that something was because I don't normally carry my passport around. It was my passport. It was my passport. So thankfully, he and I had become Facebook friends, in the time of our trip. So I Facebooked him, and I said, can you look for my passport? I think it's in the van. They couldn't find it. So I went down to the front desk, and I said to the guy down there, I think I lost my passport in Egypt. Well, did you tear your room apart? Oh, yeah. I mean, mattresses, everything in our room, looking for that passport. And they said, well, did you report it missing in Egypt? I said, I didn't know until right now that it was missing, so no. And they said, oh, well, that's a problem. So long story short, I had to talk to the American Embassy in Washington from the phone on the ship. So now we're supposed to be getting off and going into Turkey on this day, but I was on the phone trying to get a hold of the American Embassy. So I found out that you have to say that your life is in danger in order to get a person on the phone, that you're out of the country and your life is in danger in order to get a person on the phone at the American Embassy. So I finally get a person on the phone at the American Embassy, and explained my situation. I'm in the middle of the Mediterranean. I'm on this cruise. I lost my passport in Egypt. We're supposed to get off in Turkey. What do I do? And I think it's going to be simple. It's not simple if you're in another country and you lose your passport. And so they said, well, you need to get to an embassy or consulate office, but Turkey may not let you in because you don't have your passport. And I said, okay. And then she said, well, let me take your information. And she said, let me see if I can help you. Now, where are you in relationship to Gaza and this and that? And I said, well, I'm not. I'm on a cruise boat. And she said, you're on a cruise boat? She said, we have an emergency situation. I can't help you. Click. And she hung up on me. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. So I called Miami and I called all these different places. It turns out that the consulate office is not in Istanbul, where we were getting off the plane or off the boat. That was our last stop, was Istanbul. We were getting off the boat there. There is not an embassy there. The embassy was about 2 hours from there, but there was a consulate office. So this is like 2 days and 15 phone calls in. I get the consulate office in Istanbul, Turkey. And I said, explain my situation. And she said, listen, if you can get off the boat and you can get here, we can help you, but you have to get off the boat and you have to get here. And we can't tell the country to let you in. It's up to them. It's totally up to them. So we took pictures of our luggage and we gave them to Patrick and Stephen, and we said, if we get stuck, can you please grab our luggage and we'll figure something out. And they indeed pushed Patrick and Stephen through the line and out through customs, or where they stamp your passport. I don't know if that's customs. They pushed them out through that. They allowed Leland to stay with me, and they put me off to the side. Now, I'm going to backtrack, because as this was amping up, all of us started getting a little nervous about this. We were in Turkey. We've heard about Turkish prisons. You know, well, I don't have a passport. I have a picture of my passport, but I can't prove I'm American. I have nothing, you know, I have my driver's license, but that's nothing. And so we started to get a little nervous, and I started to notice that I'm getting a little nervous, and I'm starting to notice that Leland and Patrick and Stephen are getting a little nervous. And I'm like, we got to shift this. We got to shift this. And I developed a mantra. And my mantra was, we only run into people who want to help us. We only run into people who want to help us. We only want, and when I'd start to get nervous, I'd start to repeat that over and over in my head. We only run into people who want to help us. We only run into people. So the boat people were wonderful. They did everything they could. I thought this would be a common occurrence. Apparently it's not. I mean, they had to go up the ladder several times to help me. This is not a common occurrence. And so we get into port, and they set us aside with people that didn't have visas. They take care of those visas, so it was a good half hour, 45 minutes that we stood there waiting for our turn. And then a young man comes over to us and says, now, what happened to your passport? And I explained what happened, and I told him that I talked to the people at the consulate office, and if I can get there, they can help me. This is 7 o'clock in the morning, so we've got the day, which is good. And so he said, well, let me see what I can do. He brings the immigration officer over who speaks zero English, zero. And so he's talking back and forth with the guy in Turkish, and the guy's arguing. The young guy that was helping us, you know, kind of interpreting, is arguing with the immigration officer. And it turns out that he lied to him and said that I had an appointment with the consulate office, which I didn't. And that's why the immigration officer said, okay, I'll let you out. And he looked at Leland, give me your passport. So Leland had to give him his passport. So now there's the two of us no passports. And the immigration officer was very quick to say, just so you remember, you're now entering the country illegally. Good luck. And we're like, oh, jeepers. So we get upstairs and we find a cab, and we get the cab to the consulate office, and the guy drops us at the bottom of this hill, and we knew that it was up that block and didn't understand why we weren't going up that block until we got out of the car. And there was a huge demonstration going on right on the street of the consulate office. There's people, police people everywhere in riot gear and automatic weapons, and hundreds of protesters, and they're yelling, and they're behind these barricades, and there wasn't violence, there was more yelling than violence, but all of these Turkish police officers in riot gear there to keep the peace. And we're like, oh my word, they're not even going to be open. They're going to be, oh my word. And Leland looks at me and he says, do you trust me? I said, absolutely. And he goes, okay. And he grabs my hand, he goes, let's go. And we went right up through the middle of that crowd. And just walked like we were supposed to be there. And there's a spiritual thing about that too. I'm very grateful that I had Leland in there to remind me that I had somebody to trust and I'm not alone. But the truth of it is, I have somebody and something to trust, and I'm not alone regardless. Regardless. There's a spiritual lesson in there for me, and I have to remember that. So we get up the hill, we go to the consulate office, and it's a fortress. It's this fortress that has this one little gate, and this guy by the gate that has an automatic weapon, and it looks mean. And I walked up to him, and I said, hi, I've lost my passport, and the woman said if I got here that you guys could help me. Do you have an appointment? No. Go make an appointment. And he walks away. I said, excuse me. She said that as long as I could get here. And we went back and forth, and he was refusing. And I pulled out my cell phone. I said, let me see if I can find the office, and I'm about to cry and everything. And he goes, one moment. And he gets a rotary phone. And he dials the rotary phone, and he says something to somebody and then hands me the receiver. And I'm like, my mantra was not present at that moment. It should have been, but it was not present at that moment. And he hands me the receiver, and I said, hi. I said, I talked to somebody in the office the other day. I was on a boat. I was in Egypt. And she goes, oh, you talked to me. And I said, really? And she said, yes. And she said, okay, we can help you. Here's what you have to do. She said, run. Do not walk. Run across the street and go to, there are a lot of shops there where they can take your passport picture. Get your passport picture taken. Run back. I'm going to tell the guard to let you in. And then get up here as quick as you can. We have about 25 minutes to make this happen, or it's not going to happen today. And you're currently in the country illegally. Yes, I'm well aware. And so we did this and got the picture, go back, and the guard, again. And I said, well, she said that you'd let me up. Oh, okay. And he very begrudgingly let me up, would not let Leland in, would not let me have my backpack. So left my backpack. Leland goes and sits on the curb across the street to wait for me. When I get in, there were 4 levels of security, and then they did a full body scan kind of thing. They took my purse, they took my phone, so it's just me and a piece of paper walking, and then they just pointed again. Nobody spoke English in the American consulate, which was interesting, but they just pointed for where I should go. So I go up to the 2nd floor, and I walk into an office finally, And everybody there was American and speaking English. I went, oh, thank God, I can understand somebody. They gave me forms, and they said, you're good. That we're going to make you a new emergency passport, and everything will be fine. Everything's good. And I said, oh, thank heavens. So I fill out the paperwork, and they said, now here's what you're going to do. You're going to go down the street. You're going to have a nice lunch. You're going to come back here in 2 hours, and we'll have your passport. You'll be all ready, and you can go. And I said, terrific. Filled out all the paperwork, paid the fees and everything. Get back down to Leland, tell them what's going on. And we go and have Turkish eggs in this tomato sauce stuff. Really, really good. And had a nice Turkish lunch. And go back in to pick up the passport. And she said, well, the guy that was supposed to sign off on it left. He disappeared. We don't know where he is, and we don't know if or when he's coming back. And I was like, oh, geez. He did come back. I did get my passport. It was 3.5 hours later. In the meantime, he's outside. I have no phone. I have no purse. I have no way to let him know what's going on, so he doesn't know why I'm being delayed in there. Which it was a little nerve-wracking, I get the passport, this one, and I walk out into the lobby right outside the office, and who's sitting there but the mean guard? I'm like, oh no. His gun's between his legs, he's kind of kicking his feet up, and he's leaning back. And he looks at me, he said, lady. I'm like, yes? He goes, did you get your passport? And I held it up. And he gets this big smile on his face, and he says, good. Important lesson for me. Even people that look like they are not there to help you just might be. He had to do his job, but he wanted to help me just like everybody else in that office. Even people that don't look like their adversaries might be there to help you. Long story short, we get into our long story longer, actually. We get into the taxi cab, call the guy, and the kid that was down at the port had given me his cell phone number, and he said he would not leave the port until we came back so that he could make sure that we got through immigration okay. It was 5 o'clock. We hit traffic going back into Istanbul. We hit all kinds of things, but I call up this guy and I said, are you still there? He goes, I'm waiting for you. I'm still here. I'm still here. And he walked us through immigration. He walked us to the immigration office and got Leland's passport, walked us through and got us stamped, and we were in the country legally. That's my passport story. Isn't that something?
Is it still good?
No, it's only good for a year.
Okay.
And then you have to get your regular passport. But it's not good anymore, but I do have my regular passport now. So, all that story for what? All that story for what? Over and over and over and over again, we muttered to ourselves for all that time, we will only run into people who will help us. We will only run into people who will help us. And when we felt the fear coming up, we will only run into people who will help us. We will, and sometimes it was chanting a little bit. We'll only run into people who help us. We will only run into... And we did. And we did. We only ran into people who wanted to help us, even if it didn't look that way. Even if it didn't look that way. And it's why we're back here now. Phew. Makes for a great story. So I want a commitment from y'all, huh? What's that, Patrick? Yes, it did make for a great time. So we get back to the hotel, and we're like, oh my word, let's go get some food and a bottle of wine, man. And then we found out that you don't drink when you're in Turkey. The restaurants do not serve alcohol, which is okay. We still had a great time. Anyway. Yep, cup of tea. So I want a commitment from y'all. I would really like a commitment because I would like for you to commit to start to notice when your breath catches, when you're not breathing, when you're holding your breath, and maybe come up with a mantra of your own. We all have challenges. We're here, we're experiencing this life right now, which means a part of this life is having challenges. Part of this life is living with fear. With fear, because we do know what the outcome is eventually, sure, because none of us get out of here alive. But in between now and then, there are a lot of things that catch our attention and not necessarily in a positive way. And there's probably something going on in your life right now that maybe you need to notice when you're going down a pathway that is not affirmative, but is actually affirming what you don't want to see. So I'm looking for a commitment from you to come up with your we only run into people that help us. I was working with Kay a few weeks back, and we prayed together, and just out of nowhere, I'm like, Kay, you don't have to worry. God's got this. It's not yours. God's got this. And Kay told me that became her mantra. And whenever she'd feel worry come up, it was, God's got this. What's yours? What's yours? Come up with something. Notice your breath. Notice if you're holding it. There's another practice that you could do. I'm gonna do as I always do and veer off. Okay? I've got my timer up. We're going to take 3 deep breaths together. You ready? Here we go. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. One more, biggest, deepest. Inhale. Exhale with a sound. That took 23 seconds. I challenge you to potentially do that maybe 4 times a day. It changes your whole physiology. It changes everything in your physiology. It lowers your blood pressure. It does all these wonderful things. What if you did that once an hour? It took 23 seconds, so don't say you don't have time. 23 seconds. What if you did it every other hour? What if you just checked in with yourself? What if you had these mantras? These folks are tools that will change your life. They are absolutely tools that will change your life. Notice what you're noticing. Notice how you're feeling. Catch yourself. Maybe take 3 deep breaths. It only takes 23 seconds. Slip your mantra on in there. Believe your mantra. Believe your mantra. Change your life. So, the question on everybody's mind? You remember, I'm so happy. What would Ernest Holmes say? I'm so glad you asked. We are going to do, it's just a short little reading part, and then the rest of it is prayer. So we'll go right into the closing prayer, and it'll actually be by Ernest Holmes. This is from The Thing Called You, page 117. As you enter into life, feeling the divine presence of everything, more and more you will hear a song of joy singing at the center of your being. You only have to be still and listen to this song of life, for it is always there. That's why we breathe. That's why we breathe. Here's his prayer. Knowing that the loving presence is always closer to me than my very breath, I have nothing to fear. I feel this loving protection around me. I know that the song of joy, of love, and of peace is forever chanting its hymn of praise and beauty at the center of my being. Therefore, I tune out of my mind all unhappy and negative ideas. I turn the dial of my thought to sunshine of life, into brightness and laughter, into the joyous presence of radiant spirit. I lay aside all anxiety, all striving, and let the law of divine love operate through me into my affairs. Joyfully, I anticipate greater abundance, more success, and a deeper peace. Joy wells up within my mind, and life sings its song of ecstasy in my heart. And so it is. So be it. All right.